Welcome to my presentation about the MBS FileMaker plugin. My name is Christian Schmitz and I'm from Germany, so I speak English with you. For this year, we thought about making a little presentation about what changed this year. If you like to learn more about what we have done the previous years, you can watch a few videos on the website. We have quite a few videos available, so you can learn what the plugin is doing. So MBS FileMaker plugin is in development since 2006. So it's 16 years now. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting, but where is the name coming from? What's up with the name?
Oh, the name is old. Yeah, that's very old. Something like 22 years. Now, we started a company with an American guy and we made some shareware and he had the name already, so I kept the name.
But it's,
yeah, people remember it. So 16 years. So if it would be a child, it would be now allowed to drink beer in Germany and to drive a car in the US. We have currently over 6,800 functions. I know everyone just uses a few of them, but since we don't know which ones you use, we have to provide a lot of functions so everyone finds their beloved 5-6 functions. 200 functions are new this year already. So we are doing more maintenance on the existing stuff and adding less new stuff over the time. We have over 600 example databases. So if you have a week of vacation, you maybe can check them, maybe 100 a day. You would get it done in 6 days. For a lot of examples, you can just copy and paste scripts to your solution to add some value. We deliver our plugin as one plugin file. So instead of making 100 different little plugins and selling them each to you, we just decided to make one big plugin, which makes it very easy to install and update. And only the parts you're using are actually loaded in memory and are active. So for most people, 90% of the plugin is not in use. The plugin is easy to install and update because you can use the script step from FileMaker to install the plugin. We have a nice example database called install plugin if needed, which checks if the plugin is installed, and if not, it installs a fresh copy, and if it's already installed, it checks if there's a newer copy in the database so it can update it. And you can use this install plugin script step for all the platforms. So you can script to use the right one for the right platform. We support a lot of FileMaker versions. So we started making plugins around the time of FileMaker 8 using the 7 SDK. So our plugin, as of today, can still load in FileMaker 7. But you can also use it in the upcoming 19.6 version if you like. And we have support for the current FileMaker 19.5 since earlier this year. So you can use the current plugin in whatever FileMaker version you have. And Claris Pro and Claris Server are supported as of the current version. So whether you use the FileMaker product line or the Claris product line doesn't matter. It's the same plugin file. So we support Claris Pro and FileMaker Pro, one plugin. We can also use the server, Claris Server, FileMaker Server. You can use the plugin in Perform Script on Server. You can use it with scheduled scripts and with Data API and WebDirect. So Data API is new since FileMaker 19.3. And you can use the plugin for Mac, Windows, and Linux. We don't care what you have. It's one plugin and one license, so your choice. You can also use it on iOS if you use the FileMaker iOS SDK to build your own branded copy of FileMaker Go. So you have your own app for installing on iPhone with your own icon, with your own name, with your own database to open, and you can embed the plugin. If you use FileMaker Go or Claris Go, you can use Perform Script on Server to do some tasks. And we have, for example, a nice example for doing barcodes. And the script will check if the plugin is available locally And if yes, it makes a barcode locally. Otherwise, it does a perform script on server to do it on the server. So you can use the same script on either FileMaker Pro, server, Go, whatever, and it will just do the barcode. And we have one plugin for Linux, whether you use CentOS, Ubuntu 18 or Ubuntu 20. So one plugin to run everywhere. That's a lot of effort, and I think people appreciate it. Not like other plugin vendors which make different things for different versions. So the MBS plugin has one function added to the script workspace, one script step, and one function for the calculation editor. You could imagine what would happen if we would add 6,000 entries there. So very early when we started making the plugin, we decided to make this one dispatcher function, which takes as a first parameter the function name. So this can come from a calculation or a script step, like people use, for example, our plugin with the image effects, and maybe show a little pop-up menu with the effect to pick up, and then basically the text in the pop-up is as a function name. So you can make it very dynamically, or people use a table where they put all the function calls for DynaPDF to generate a PDF. And so the user can just go edit the record and change the coordinates for drawing a line or something like that. Every function may return an error. So we have this isError function to query the error status. And this works well on threads. So on a FileMaker server, every script running has their own error state. So you can run several scripts in parallel and still get to know which script made an error. Also, if you do some logging or you check the results, you can look for the MBS prefix on the error messages. And you have to know that we have a lot of functions taking reference numbers. So you may have, for example, the JSON function return you a number, and then you pass that number to the next function to refer to the same object in memory. And this way you can combine a lot of function calls for one object in memory to use the object without putting all in one big call. So we have functions for PDF with DynaPDF. So we can create PDFs, edit them, extract text and images, merge PDFs, encrypt them, decrypt them, optimize them. And in the last year, we added complex text rendering for Windows. It's yet to come for Mac and Linux. But it allows you to provide an alternative font list. So if you write text on a PDF and the user is typing a character which is not included in the current font, we can pick it from another font and avoid an error about it. Then the PDF standard changes, and we are always adding new versions, so we can now do PDF A in a few more variants, like 2U and 3U, and also PDF X 5 and 6 now. That doesn't usually matter to you. Just if the customer says we need PDF X5 for this print job, you can just do it with a plugin and convert your existing PDF to PDF X5 and deliver. We also support Zugpferd and Factor X standards. Those are used in Zugpferd is used in Germany for electronic invoices, where we have a PDF document with an embedded XML file. And we have an example for that to produce the XML file and then embed it. And the French people did similar things with Factor X, so I would assume Sweden has a similar thing. Then we also got a rendering intent function. So if you add a picture to a PDF page, you can now specify the rendering intent for the color matching, so your image looks like you want it to look. Then we have secret functions. We have secret functions both within FileMaker and to external databases. And if one of your clients has one of those databases, you can now tell them, yes, we can connect directly to it in a script. We can move data from one side to the other, run a few queries, and integrate with those databases. And we especially offer things like MySQL without ODBC, or Microsoft SQL Server access from a Mac or Linux machine, which some people find really useful. We improved this year about the MySQL and MariaDB things, so we can now better encrypt the connection. And I put some work into improving the handling for decimal numbers. So if you have something in a MySQL table with a decimal number, it's not converted internally to a double, so you don't get any rounding problems. So if the number is passed to FileMaker as it is, so no rounding. Then we have, with the Vision framework from Apple, a few functions, and we have a recognize text function, which works similar to the get live text function you got in FileMaker recently. But our function has been there for 3 years, and we now improved it to handle PDF documents. So you can use Apple's framework for machine learning to extract text from pictures and PDF documents optically, and use that on macOS and iOS. We also have OCR functions cross-platform with Tesseract, which is on another slide. So let's
Question?
Yeah.
There's a within CoreML, there's a detection type. I don't know if I'm using the right word,
Yeah.
but it's called object detection.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing as image.
No, but I think we also have object detection.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the plugin.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like we have this CoreML examples to, so you can not just run a model, but you can also ask the plugin for, take a look on this picture and show me where are faces or other things, or tell you what's on the picture, what's the main object on this picture. And you can use your own model, of course, with CoreML functions, but you can also use a standard model coming with the operation system.
You can just go back to the slide.
Oops. Some work for this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have functions to work with Word files. And I always have to say you should not need those, because you should store your texts in the database and then only publish a PDF. But if you ever need to use Word files, you can of course use a plugin to load a template Word file, fill in some text and send it to someone. But be aware that if those people who get the Word document change it, you wouldn't have the changes in your database. So. But we have people who need that, so we got a replacement system for tags, but also we got just a way to replace any text. So there's a contains function to check if some text exists in the Word document, and then a substitute function to change the text. You can also list tags for replacement, and we can now save to a container. So we don't need to write to a file on disk, we can just do it in memory, and you can put the Word document into a container. Then we have Tesseract. This is an open source OCR software. So we can use it in the plugin, and we recently added new functions to use the newer versions of Tesseract. So we have the version 3 and the plugin forever. And now you can also use OCR load function to load the newer versions and use those. And eventually we want to remove the old version, because the newer ones recognize much better.
How, if you compare this for a professional OCR application like...
Well, this Tesseract was a commercial OCR application,
okay.
And it was later open sourced.
Okay.
So
basically you can use this instead of the...
Yeah, it should be quite good, and I would expect that a lot of other services offering you OCR just run it on the background. You can use it on a server. It works very well with several scripts, so you can speed up your processing by using several CPU cores on a server. Then we also got functions for barcodes. We can generate over 80 types of barcodes. So if you need something usual, like an EIN code, or something more unusual, like a code for the Japanese post office, We have that. You can recognize barcodes, and for that we have 3 ways. The first one is the old barcode detect function using the Sing library. We have a newer barcode scan function using the setbar library, which can recognize those types. And we have the Vision detect barcode function using Apple's frameworks for Mac and iOS. So we have 3 ways to detect barcodes in a document, and some people use all 3 and see whatever works, because every one of those functions has their limits. So next thing, we have the curl library, which is also used internally in FileMaker for insert from URL, but we offer you more flexibility, more options, allowing you to run a curl transfer in the background, so you don't block the user. You can use it for up and download of HTTP, FTP with various encryption settings. We can send and receive emails. And we have a nice IMAP example, as you see on the picture here, where we can download emails from an IMAP postbox and then display the list of emails. You can open an email and it displays it with the HTML and the embedded images. We also got a curl options function, which allows you to get a JSON with all the options you set on a curl object. This way you can easier debug your scripts by seeing which options are in use for a transfer. And if you do SFTP, we can now use SHA-256 comparison for the host keys, so you're more secure with newer servers. Then we have webhooks. So we run a little web server within the plugin, which can listen for incoming HTTP requests. Like, for example, if you have a phone system in your company, you may be able to assign for every phone number a computer to trigger with an HTTP request for an incoming call. And we can listen for this incoming call with the plugin and then trigger a script. So whenever calls your phone next to your computer, we can run a script so you can see the record for the phone number and find the customer by the phone number, and you can do a lot of nice things with that. I also used to show an example a few conferences ago where we had a little Bluetooth button, and whenever you press a button it will send an HTTP request. So you can actually do some things with FileMaker to automate. We added a few functions like getState, where you now can create the state of an incoming request, like is it the request started, it got the headers, it got the body, and it's ready to be to trigger the script. We also got functions to query the size of a request, and we added a function to set the maximum size of a request, so we can avoid people flooding your server with too many requests. So we can limit the size of requests, and we can also limit how many can be on queue. So we can slow it down a little bit. Then we have custom functions defined in JavaScript. So a lot of people like nowadays to use JavaScript. So we have 2 engines in the plugin. We have the duct tape engine for cross-platform JavaScript execution, and we can use WebKit on Mac and iOS to also run JavaScript. And this is for running JavaScript without a web viewer. So you can do some calculation or other things. And people use that for all kinds of things, like, for example, for doing some regular expressions in JavaScript, for working with JSON, because that's the way JSON was defined as a storage for JavaScript. And then we have array functions in JavaScript. So you could have a little JavaScript code where you call it and pass it some parameters, and then it can process a JSON, do some searches, and on the end give you back a result. For custom functions defined with a plugin in a database, you can use our FMCF for custom functions written in as FileMaker calculations, but also we have JSCF and JavaScript CF for our 2 engines to run custom functions written in JavaScript. And for the custom functions, it's great that you can store them as text in a field, so you can easily move them from one database to another and remotely sync them, whatever. And you just load them at the start of your application, and then you can call them wherever you like with an MBS call. So next, if you do custom dialogs with a plugin, you can now decide the text alignment. So you can use left or right alignment, and you are not forced to use the center alignment. And if you like to import pictures from a digital camera, we have functions for macOS for years with image capture, but we also got those nice dialogs for Windows, so you can automate importing pictures on Windows. Then we have functions for debugging. So when you use our trace function to log all the MBS plugin calls, you can now see the parameter names there, which helps a lot to see which value you passed for which parameter, because sometimes people mess it up and pass the wrong order of parameters. We also allow you to pause the trace. So if you have a function which calls a lot of MBS and you don't want them all in the trace log, you can pause it. Also, you can use the isError function to check the error state, but we got a little bit more there with our clear error, head error, and error logs. So this is like a try catch. On the start of the script, you would call clear error to clear all the state. Then you would call maybe 100 MBS functions. And after that, you can ask with head errors if any of those functions return an error. And then use error log to get a JSON with all the errors. So we would show you in the JSON which function you called, what are the parameters, and what was the result. And a few more things. So it helps a lot to check for errors, and you may just use it. And it can be used on a server per script. So if you have several scripts running in parallel, everyone has its own error log. You can also query the metadata we have by asking the plugin what are the functions parameters or what platforms are supported. Next, we got a few functions for MongoDB. So since Claris told people that they are using MongoDB, a lot of people got interested in using MongoDB themselves. So we have functions to connect natively from the plugin to MongoDB directly. You can pick a database, a collection, which is MongoDB's version of a table. And then you can use plugin functions to add, update, or delete records. We can also pass in a big JSON to insert several records at once, if you like. All the records are stored as BSON internally, but the plugin provides you the values as JSON, and you pass in JSON, so we do the JSON to BSON translation for you. You can find things, like you can find records, get values back, run queries, and you can, of course, run custom commands, for example, the ping one. And this is available for all targets and platforms. And we recently added support for transactions. So if you have a client with a MongoDB database and they are asking you to upload data, you can just do it with the plugin. If you like to use the FileMaker iOS SDK, you can do that with our plugin. We added support for Apple Silicon for the simulator this year. We regularly update DynaPDF to use on iOS. We got functions for sharing panel, so you can share several files, text, pictures with other people. For example, you can share text with a subject line and some pictures to make an email with those pictures as attachment. We also got a photo picker functions, which allows you to show this nice dialog to pick pictures from your photo library and import them to your FileMaker solution. We also got a general document picker, which provides you a save and open dialog on iOS, so you can open files from iCloud or save to iCloud. Then, if you like, we can change the text of dialogs on iOS. We also have those functions for macros. So if you get an error message from FileMaker and you like to change the text, you can tell the plugin to replace the text in the next dialog with whatever text you like. We got our podcast dialog functions updated for iOS. So you can have a way to show podcast to the user. We allow you to use this round progress bar, but also a straight rectangle one. Then we have a few more little functions. For example, we have audit functions, and they can now store dates and times as numbers. That avoids trouble if you have users with different locales, and you don't like to get confused when some people write the audit logs with US date and some with here European date notation. And then we got also a one-time password calculator function. So if you have a web service using one of these authentication apps with a time-based one-time password, you can calculate that in a script, and so your script is a second factor. Then if you use our variable functions to have really global variables, with the plugin you can now use the lookup function, so you can read the variable, and if it doesn't exist you can pass in a default value. We got more metrics functions. Our metrics, those are functions for a two-dimensional array in memory where you can store values, and you can now rotate this metrics, and you can convert data types of values. Like you may want to read in a CSV file into a matrix that maybe make a few changes in the columns, like convert from text to number, and then later use the SQL functions to move that data to your table. Then we have a couple of enhancements for FileMaker itself, for the development tools. And new in the calculations are, in the last version, shortcuts to move text left and right. So you can indent your calculations. We also got a function to colorize a script. So if you copy script text and you like to colorize it, to put it on your block, we got a separate functions for that. We also got functions for code folding, and a lot of people already like that you can just look into your scripts, and if the script is very long you can shrink the lines for a few blocks. Then we got links in the comments. So if you write a comment in your script, you can include a link to some documentation page, to another script, another database, and we add a little widget on the right side, and you can click that to open the link. So you may jump directly from your script to the documentation of the web service you're calling, or you may put in a link to a script, and if you click the link, we can execute a script via the FMP URL, so it can directly jump you to whatever database or layout you're talking about. Or here, send a mail with a mail to link. We got context menu commands to sort layouts and script names by name. So if you have like 100 layouts and you can't find anything anymore, you may find it useful to sort them alphabetically.
That is so good.
So next thing, if you write a get function, we often forget to remember what exactly the return value is. So we like to jump to the documentation for those. The MBS plugin includes a list of all the get function texts and the links. So whenever you have a get function, we can turn the function name there into a link. So when you click it, you jump to the browser. And you see we have it localized here. I think that's German, English, French, Korean, Japanese, Dutch, Swedish, and then Chinese. So we have done it for all the languages supported by FileMaker currently. The other languages like Italian or Spain, they use English names. So, and we got a few buttons for calculations. So you may have noticed it, that there are buttons here on the bottom. And what we added is a way for you to add table occurrence prefixes. So if you're working on a calculation and you use it in the field definition, and then you copy it to somewhere else, you may want to add the table occurrences so it still works. Or you want to remove them. So you can do that with a plugin, and you can pick which table is the current one on the pop-up menu, and then the plugin just uses the name from the pop-up menu as a prefix. Also a nice thing is the variable auto-completion. A lot of people love this. The plugin shows you, when you type in $, we show you all the variables in the script defined above the current line. We also show you the global variables we saw before. So over time you will get a lot of globals there, and it avoids mistyping a variable name. It's very helpful. For let functions, you can also see suggestions for local variables, like with a prefix of a title, a cent, or an underscore, which can also be very handy. As we made autocomplete for variable names, the next thing to do was autocomplete for MBS function calls. So you can type an MBS function, and we make suggestions based on the current text. And then when you complete the function name, we also put in the parameters, so you can easily fill them, and also use the variable completion to quickly fill them. So next thing, if you have somewhere in FileMaker, you see layouts, you see value lists, you see tables, you see fields, we offer you to add an ID column, so you can get the ID number. And this helps you with our functions to get the ID to the name or name to ID, because the ID usually never changes, but the name may change. So you may decide what to do with that, but some people just code it that if they go to a layout, they don't put in the go to layout the name, but a function call to ask the plugin for the name for the ID. So if they rename the layout, it still works. Then we finally got something for Windows. So in case anyone uses Windows, I think it's an operation system, we got a little search box for the relationship diagram. So you can type something in there, like here, press return, and it jumps to addresses. It may be very useful for you, and if you use Windows, you may be finally happy to see something to enhance your life, besides buying a Mac.
Everything else was not for Windows.
Yeah, all these nice enhancements like script search also not possible, but recently we got, well, I was a little surprised to see that we can actually do something for this dialog with the graph, but nothing else so far, but you never know.
I have tried, I'm a Mac user, I have tried to search in the relationship category graph, but I can't get it to work.
Then maybe you show me later, but usually it's very easy. You just type in some letters, press return, and it jumps somewhere. We'll see. So resources. So we have a website where you can learn all about the plugin. We have a documentation page with a lot of examples, and we have a blog where I often provide some tips or pointers to events like this conference. We have a collection of videos where you can learn more about the plugin, and of course you can sign up for a newsletter or a trial license. Yeah, and if you like to buy a license, we have a conference special, so 20% discount on a new license. If you want one, you can come to our booth, and we can give you one of our flyers. So if you have any questions?
100. No, just kidding. I have one question. In the beginning, you said this year in 2022 you had 200 new features.
Yeah.
I started calculating, then that's one a day or so. Almost.
Yeah, well, when I added something like the MongoDB function, that was in 3-4 days, maybe 50 new functions. And then there are other weeks where I'm on holiday and you get no new functions.
What?
Yeah, I still have a life. I go on vacation, but usually people don't notice because I'm answering emails from the hotel bar. So
That's my second question. Are you working alone on Monkeybread or are you a team?
now we have several people, like Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And besides that, thank you very much. Very interesting. I love your plugin. It helped me a lot. Really. So.
Yeah, I read it.
Thank you. And if you have any ideas for new functions, please email me. If you find an error in the documentation or so, or you like to add something, like please add a note or an example, please use those feedback links in the documentation where you can directly type something in a form and send it to me. And I'm always happy to add more examples or more details.
Actually, Christian, I did email you a year ago or so about the sort scripts, and you said it was not possible. But here you are.
Yeah, as usual. I have, with several things I've tried for years, like on Windows, I always try to get something done, but from the operation system, when I ask what's on this window, it says 0 because it's all custom controls made by Claris. But with a search for the relationship graph, I noticed, yeah, it returns 0 for all the controls there, but one control is there because the graph isn't control I can see and touch with my code. So I got to search there. And the same with the sorting, because I thought about how could I do that and how do I get into the pop-up menu. And then one year I got this little hint how I can get in the pop-up menu. And then I thought, oh yeah, I can extend the pop-up menu with a lot of commands. And then I got the idea, how could I do the sorting? I mean, there is no API to tell FileMaker sorting, but I decided, yeah, but I can tell FileMaker that the user is starting a drag operation and drop it there. So if you sort it, you actually see them jumping around a lot because I'm just telling FileMaker that the user just made a lot of drag and drops to sort it.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, like in a second, maybe 200 or so. So to sort all the scripts.
So basically, lots of monkeys doing stuff.
So it's GUI automation. It's because there's no other way for me to tell FileMaker to swap two layouts in their order. So.
Impressive.
And once you get the idea on how you can do that, it's just coding, crashing a lot of, and finally it works.
I think many of the functions in the user interface that you have done should be implemented in FileMaker natively.
Yeah,
they should pay you a lot of money.
well, I offered it several times Claris to help, but it's not what they are interested in. You saw it in the presentation this morning. If Claris writes a new calculation editor, it will not be on your Mac, it will be a web thing. Like maybe someday we type our calculations in a new editor in FileMaker Pro and it's a web-based control. I don't know.
It's bloody good.
Very good.
Okay. So thank you for coming.